Indeed. The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. And the illustration of that is for that we go to Antwerp right now. Some live pictures here from the situation in Antwerp. No, just kidding. This is not live, but this is an everyday situation we are facing in Antwerp. But we're not facing this only in Antwerp. We see this everywhere in every major city in Europe. The fact is that our transport system is no longer sustainable at this moment in time. And that is because we are for 75% dependent on road transport nowadays. Not that it is a problem by itself, but having road traffic being so important, it comes with some side effects. One of those side effects is that road transport is responsible for 10% of all carbon emissions. And if we look at if we would include passenger transport and so on, we're actually responsible for 25% of Europe's carbon emissions. And this is also causing quite a lot of problems. Actually, the road transport sector is becoming the victim of its own success, losing 15 days of work time in traffic on an average a year. And there is another side effect, which is often underestimated, and that's the number of people that are actually dying prematurely due to air pollution linked to road traffic. And if you look at these numbers, it puts some of the COVID measures into perspective, I would say. And the problem is that this won't get any better because we are expecting a growth of about 30% of transport in Europe, meaning that the side effects that we're talking about will grow accordingly. So there is, of course, the idea is that we will be able to solve it by innovation in the road transport. And that is obviously very important and very useful. But let us be honest, all experts agree that electrifying road transport by 2030 will not happen. It will happen for quite a number of types of trucks, but not the biggest heavy loads that we are talking about. Secondly, even if we would succeed in making sure that it will all be running electrically by 2030, we'll still be stuck in traffic. And we still have all these traffic jams we won't be solving. Secondly, supposing also that we would still be able to electrify the whole road transport sector, where will all the energy come from? Where will all this green energy come from? Because every single sector is looking for green energy. So we know for a fact that we also need, at this moment in time, if we really want to reach our climate objectives and our mobility, and actually also attack our mobility issues, we need a partial solution coming from modal shift. And we need to drastically do that. And why is that so important? Because if you use rail, you lose 9 times less CO2 emissions and you pollute 8 times less than any other transport mode. You also use 6 times less energy than other transport modes. So in many ways, train is part of the solution because a train replaces 50 trucks. And as a rail freight sector, we are really ambitious, as you just saw in the movie. We really want to double rail freight by 2030. And this ambition is not only shared by us, it is actually shared by all the employers' associations as well. Only a few weeks ago, here in this building, together with VBO-FEB, we launched a railroad map with all the employers' associations in Belgium, with all the ports and so on, saying that we want to double rail freight by 2030. And it's also being shared by governments. Governments are also saying that we need to do this, particularly the European Commission with its Green Deal and its smart sustainability mobility strategy. The question then really is, what do we do, or what should we do? Well, we need to build a high-performing multimodal transport system with rail as a backbone. And the question is, how do we do that? Well, first of all, we need to make sure that rail freight companies come up with products in such a way that every company is saying, why would I use road if I can also use rail? That means an awful lot of modernizing, innovating, and digitalizing of all the work processes that we have within the rail freight. Secondly, our infrastructure managers need to take on another role, not just maintaining the network that they build, but also making sure that the flows on this network are being managed. We only asking this from our infrastructure managers, make sure that we can drive a train in Europe as easily as you can drive a truck. But having said that, that's much easily more said than done. It would require an awful lot of work. Supposing that we can all do this as infrastructure managers and as railway operators, it still won't do. We can't do this alone. We need governments to step in. And we need them to step in for two major things. First thing is, if we really want to have a multimodal transport system, you need to make sure that every transport mode can actually optimize its use. That means that the market should be organized in such a way that all economic players make the best decisions. And in today's market is actually not functioning optimally. Why? Because the market price does not reflect the real cost of every transport mode. And one thing to do would be to really include in the price the external effects that every transport mode is responsible for. One way to do this could be an emission trading system for transport. Could be many other ways. We don't take a position, but it's obvious that you need to make sure that all economic players make the best decisions for our economy in the long run and not only in the short run. Secondly, we need our governments to step in to fund innovation also in the rail freight sector. We really need to reinvent rail freight in Europe. Otherwise, our sector will not be able to contribute to a more sustainable transport system of Europe. And as a sector, we are convinced, and we actually have agreed what steps we need to take in order to reinvent the rail freight. And we are betting on 5 major technologies that we're really working on and that we're really investing in as a group all over Europe. What are those 5 technologies? We want 5 technologies to make, first of all, rail freight borderless. Borderless by having a European rail traffic management system, making sure that all infrastructure managers actually work underneath one network in order to make sure that train can run safely from A to B all over Europe. And later today, you will also get a testimonial by one of a great startup company in Belgium, TSC, that is showing also how can this be done in a smart and an innovative way. Secondly, we are betting on a technology to make rail more flexible. You should know that if you want to drive a train in Europe, you need to have a rail path in order to go from A to B. Now, requesting a rail path and getting a rail path can take weeks, months, even sometimes more than a year. Well, this is not longer adapted to the needs of the logistical world in the 21st century. We need to be able to order a rail path on a click, like I'm clicking right now. You need to be able to get a rail path on a click. We need some kind of a Google Maps for rail freight, and this is a technology that we want to develop with digital capacity management. Thirdly, we want to become more seamless. Seamless not only within the rail freight sector, but also with all the other transport modes, and that's where we're really investing in digital platforms in order to make sure that the data available regarding locomotives, regarding wagons, is not just available for infrastructure managers, for other railway operators, but is available for all the parties part of the logistical chain so that we can boost multimodality. Fourth, we need to go faster. We need to increase the commercial speed of rail freight. And one of the major technologies that we will be investing in the next 10 years is making sure that we can couple wagons in a digital and automatic way. Nowadays, this is still done manually, and we lose, for composing every train, hours every time. This can be done much faster. And last but not least, we also want to make sure that rail freight becomes easier, and that's where we're really betting on automated train operations so that ultimately we will automate the driving of trains. With these 5 technologies, we think we can take a real freight leap forward into the 21st century. Digital platforms, a European traffic management system, digital capacity management, automated train operation, digital automatic coupling, that will be the basis for the innovation to make sure that rail freight is really the most modern transport part of Europe. And we are building this rail backbone to make Europe's transport system really high-performing and multimodal. But we can't do this ourselves. We also need you, industries, we need you, innovators, to make this happen. And we also need our governments to take up decisive action for modal shift. Yes, last night I was attending a keynote conference of Frans Timmermans at an informal summit in Ghent. And he was also referring to the first slogan I mentioned. So should we be doing this in Europe? Because, you know, if you look at the whole CO2 problem, is it really a European problem? We're only responsible for 8% of CO2 emissions in the world. The United States is responsible for 16%, China for 28%. Why should we take the lead in this? Why should we change? Well, the reason is very simple, he said. It is actually about an industrial revolution. Making sure that your economy becomes carbon-free is the fourth industrial revolution. And Europe has always been in the forefront of the industrial revolution, and in particularly UK, Belgium have been in the forefront of the industrial revolution. You know the steam engine, and you know that railway was part of the first industrial revolution, in particularly in Belgium. We as railways want to be back in the game and also be part of this fourth industrial revolution. We can be a flagship for a green, a resilient, and an innovative Europe that we really want and that we really need. We are ready for that, and we want you to help us make this happen. And I'd like to thank you for your attention.